Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Orange and Brown Talk podcast. Dan Labbe with Mary Kay Cabot, a Hey Mary Kay edition of the podcast. Getting back on our usual schedule here on a Monday, a week after free agency. We have met virtually, met the new offensive lineman. We've met Quincy Williams. We are starting to get into that second stage of free agency here and really gearing up for the NFL draft. So a Hey Mary Kay edition of the pod, questions from our Football Insider subscribers. And we are going to start with a draft question. This comes from DJ in Colorado Springs. Hey, Mary Kay, knowing how deficient the offense was last year and the need for talent on that side of the ball, what are the chances Andrew Berry goes defense with number 6? You know, historically, he doesn't like to be limited with his draft decisions. And I feel like on top of will the Browns pick a quarterback, Mary Kay, I feel like this is the question we're going to get a lot. Would the Browns actually go defense at number 6?
I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. It's probably unlikely at this point, but really not out of the realm of possibility because if Caleb Downs or Arvell Reese are there, I mean, you just never know what he might decide to do there. I mean, I would think that they would be more apt to go with a Monroe Freeling or even a Carnell Tate there over a defensive guy. But you can never say never with Andrew Berry because they go into the draft not needing anything. They look at it as though they're an expansion team and they've got to start from scratch. So it would not be shocking or preposterous for him to go defense if the most highly rated player is a defensive guy. So I wouldn't put anything past him. He sometimes zigs when we think he's going to zag, and you just never really know. Although, like I said, I do think it'll be offense, and I do think there's a chance he will try to trade down.
Yeah, I do feel like trading down is a more likely scenario than maybe taking a defensive player at 6. But I do keep wondering, like, what's going to happen if Caleb Downs is there? What if they do fall in love with Arvell Reese or, you know, somebody at a premium position on defense? Could they just decide, like, let's go that route and let's make the side of the ball that's already great, let's make it even greater? And maybe there is a tackle they like it. Maybe they feel like Monroe Freeling or someone else is going to slide down to where they can pick them around 24, or maybe they want to go receiver at 20. I don't know. There's so many ways he could go, but I think the biggest point here is Andrew Berry can be a little bit unpredictable when it comes to things like this. But then I'm also reminded of 2020 when it just felt like all along, yep, they're taking a left tackle. They're taking somebody to be their left tackle for the next 10 years. Obviously, that part of it didn't work out, but then sitting there number 10, they take a tackle. So I don't know if this is one of those years where Andrew's going to be super predictable and it's right there in front of our faces, or if he's got something up his sleeve that we aren't ready for.
Well, of course, we're going to overthink it, right? They need a tackle. They have all kinds of really, really good tackles in this draft. And it really does seem like that is going to be the way to go. But once again, if you do have almost I don't think there's necessarily a generational receiver in this draft, but if you have a really good game-changing receiver that can change the fortunes of your franchise in a hurry, then I would do that. I believe that receiver is a premium position, and I would take one at number 6, or if you trade down a little bit. So we'll see. But right now, if I had to make a pick for the Cleveland Browns, and if they were staying at number 6, I would go Freeland.
So as we're kind of going through this, right, we've talked so much about like the young players and sort of where all these guys that are already on the roster fit. We talked about Ced Tillman and guys like that. And as we look at the shape of this offensive line, I do wonder, and I'm not saying this is like I would expect him to be the week 1 starter at left tackle. Where do you think Dawand Jones fits kind of in this offensive line remake? Because obviously he's a young guy who that rookie year seemed like maybe the Browns had found something playing right tackle in place of Jack Conklin. And then the last 2 years, it just really hasn't gone well. Injury, performance, moving him to the left side, it just hasn't worked out. Do you think Dawand Jones still kind of fits in the plans? Like I said, probably not as your week 1 left tackle. Who knows, though? Do you think he's still sort of a guy they're interested in?
I think so. I really do think so. But when you have trouble staying healthy, and it's not anybody's fault. I mean, my goodness, when you're getting hit low and you're breaking bones and things like that. These things are not your fault, obviously. But sometimes you just need to go in another direction. Now, I don't know if they will do that or not, but the thing to remember about Dawand is they were trying to start to transition him back to right tackle. And now that spot is filled with Tytus Howard. So the opening for Dawand is at left tackle, and he doesn't feel overly comfortable there. And he hasn't played a lot of football in the last couple of years at all. So I think you have to move forward. And if you can get something out of him, even a full season at some spot, then I think that's going to be a tremendous bonus for you. Or maybe he competes with the guy that you bring in and he blows it out of the water. But I think you have to head in to the 2026 season with another starting option at left tackle in the event that he's either not 100% ready or it just doesn't work out for you the way that you hope that it will. It's too important of a position, especially in today's game. There's too many good edge rushers. I mean, you got Trey Hendrickson coming, from Baltimore now. You still have TJ Watt. So, and there will be plenty others along the way, even just this season. So I think that you really have to make sure that you have your ducks in a row on that side of the line.
Yeah, and then maybe it would just be best for Dawand if he kind of comes in and he gets to be that swing tackle this year and be the guy that if somebody gets hurt, you can play the right side, you can play the left side, you're going to be depth. That's still a valuable piece to have. Obviously, he wants to be a starter, I'm sure, but like having a guy that can play on both sides and has played on both sides matters. And I think to your point, even though they haven't been, like recurring injuries, like, oh, it's the same knee that gets hurt over and over again, or it's a hamstring, the guy can't out of the way of soft tissue injuries. They have been freakish traumatic injuries. The fact of the matter is he has been getting hurt. And I think with a lot of these guys, I know Elton Jenkins is coming off a season-ending injury, but for the most part, these guys that they brought in have all played and played a lot. And I think after the last few years, this team just needs stability as much as anything. Obviously, they've got to be able to play and play well, but this team just needs 5 guys that can stay on the field together for more than a few weeks at a time.
Right. They always say, of course, the best ability is availability. And you hate to talk about it in terms of a guy getting injured or being injury prone or whatever, because it isn't fair when somebody takes kind of a low, what Kevin Stefanski thought was illegal hit on Dawand Jones. And you hate to put a guy in that bucket of injury prone. It's not really fair. And I don't think he deserves that moniker at all. But it's a business and you still do have to plan for what you need to do. And I don't care whether it's Deshaun Watson, Shador Sanders, or whoever else they bring in. You have to have a good, solid plan at left tackle. It's vitally important. I still think it's the most important position on the offensive line. Now, I know that right tackle has come up the curve on that a little bit, but I still think it's left tackle. I still think that's where you're going to get most of your pressure coming from, and or at least the majority of it. And so I think you have to move forward and then hope that you can still get something out of Dawand in some way.
And then kind of elsewhere on that line is again, because we talked to these guys recently, this is just sort of all fresh in my mind. With Elton Jenkins, as we kind of await this Joel Bitonio decision, and we've seen Tevin Jenkins's contract. That's more of that doesn't mean he can't be a starter, but that's more of a backup contract. In a perfect world, should we write Elton Jenkins in as the center in Penn, or is there a chance that if Joel Bitonio doesn't come back, I mean, this is a guy that has made the Pro Bowl at guard, that maybe they could look at Elton Jenkins as one of their starting guards, and maybe center is still, maybe Luke Whippler's in play, maybe there's a draft pick, maybe Ethan Posick has a miraculous recovery and they bring him back. I know he's a free agent right now, but who knows? Like, is that still a little bit unsettled?
I think so. I think it is. Because like you said, Elton Jenkins has played his best ball at guard, and he's only started 9 consecutive games at center, and those were all last year before he got injured. So I do think that he's probably in the mix for one of the guard spots, depending on what happens. So they've got some versatility. They've got some pieces and parts they can move around. And we have heard them talk about Luke Whippler at center. So maybe he's still in the mix. Maybe you draft a center. Maybe, maybe Ethan Posick does come back and he's ready to go in, October, November, or something like that. So yeah, I think that they have some options with what they can do with some of these guys. And I don't think anything is written in stone yet. Although when we did talk to Tytus Howard today, he basically said, I am the right tackle. That's what I do best. That's what they want me doing.
Yeah, that's one I think we can certainly write in. I think we thought that, but then he sent pretty much. I mean, not pretty much. He did confirm that today, saying that he was going to be the right tackle. So we at least have that one, but everything else we'll still figure out. And we even got a question about our buddy KT Leviston, who I know Lance has been pushing as a possible guard, and Ty in Montreal wants to know if he could potentially be a guard. I think anything's on the table for any of these guys. We've gotten a lot of Zach Zinter questions, Mary Kay. Like 2 people asked about Zach Zinter. I don't know if he's fighting to be on the roster this year, if he's safe and could just be fighting to be a backup. I don't know, but there's a lot of options behind these guys too. And I do kind of wonder where a guy like Zach Zinter falls into all of this. Is he still in the mix to maybe be one of your extra interior guys?
Well, Andrew Berry has spoken recently at the combine, about it's time to let some of the younger guys get their shot. And I'm guessing that Zach Zinder falls in that bucket. And I'm anxious to ask Andrew about that when we meet up with those guys at the NFL annual meeting. Now, that will be coming up March 28th through the 31st out in Arizona. We go out there, we talk to Andrew Berry out there, we talk to the Haslams, and then we have a breakfast with all the coaches. So we'll sit down for about a half an hour with Todd Monken there. So looking forward to getting some answers on some of these things. We'll know a little bit more then about maybe who might fit where. And then also by then we'll have a little bit better of an idea of what they might be thinking in the draft or not thinking in the draft. Although gamesmanship will be played. I mean, it will be time to throw some people off or send up some flares and try to make sure that if you want somebody to come up for the number 6 overall pick, that you are putting out some information that helps you do that. So we'll see how that all is going to go. But I'm very curious to hear what they have to say about Zach Zinder, because he really has been the forgotten man. And he was to be the heir apparent to Joel Bitonio or Wyatt Teller. And we have to see if that's still in the cards.
I've been thinking a lot about the owners' meetings, and kind of getting to hear what all those guys say. And because Kevin was just so unflappable over and over, like you just couldn't get him to crack or say anything. But I don't know. I'm curious to see what Todd is like sitting there at that table for however long holding court. And then I'm really interested to hear what the Haslams say about the plan at quarterback, because like weirdly, Jimmy Haslam has been maybe the most open and honest person in that front office. Whenever he's talked, he's laid out pretty much, he called Deshaun Watson a swing and a miss last year. He's kind of laid out this plan that they have to rebuild this roster. And, Andrew has sort of grudgingly started using some of that terminology here over the last few months. But I just think it's really interesting. I'm very interested to see specifically what Todd Monken and also what the Haslams say about the quarterback position. And if maybe you come back from Arizona in a couple weeks with like, okay, yeah, this is it. We know pretty much where this thing is. Maybe we already do. We've talked about it a lot. But like, will this confirm some of the things we think we already know?
It will be very interesting to hear what they have to say. It is so hard to believe that 1 year after a big swing and a miss, Deshaun is firmly in the mix to start for the Cleveland Browns on opening day. He will compete for that job. And I've talked to people that think he's the front runner. And I've talked to other people that believe that Shador is the front runner. So it's very, very hard to say. And I actually think it's early to handicap it, because I think that Todd Monken has to get out there with these guys and actually see it and get a feel for it and see how they're picking up his new scheme and flourishing in his new scheme. And the interesting thing about installing a new scheme is the fact that you really would tweak it if it's Deshaun or if it's Shador. You can if Deshore Deshore.
So I
I
started saying this at the combine, and apparently it has just caught on everywhere where we're just combining Deshaun and Shador's names.
I'm oh my goodness. I'm just gonna Deshore. That is so funny. Um
I think at the combine, it might have even been on a pod. I might have said Shadon. I don't remember. I said something like that.
oh, we're in for trouble trying to keep this all straight. But if you think Deshaun is going to be your guy and he has his mobility back, then you're going to do different things with him than you would do with Shador because he is a genuine dual threat quarterback. He's a running quarterback. We've seen it. We know what it is, right? We don't have to guess. And it falls more in line with, I mean, not completely, of course, but he's probably a little closer to Lamar than he is to Shador. So, very interesting to see how they manage all of that. Because if you have a vision, if you have a vision for your offense and how it's going to work, you're going to almost have to have two of those with the way this is going to go.
And I think too, like obviously, look, this is what we have to talk about right now. And we're spending a ton of time on it. It's getting talked about on sports radio. It's getting written about in a million places. And certainly Todd and his staff are sitting there watching tape on these guys and making some they have some preliminary thoughts, I'm sure. But like, it is worth noting it's March 16th and this offseason program doesn't even start until with the Monday or Tuesday after Easter. You know, it's a few weeks away. He can't even like coach these guys yet. He's not even like he can't sit in a room with Shador Sanders and Deshaun Watson and go over film and like, you know, talk to them about the playbook and talk to them about the scheme. So he hasn't even sat in meetings with these guys yet because he's just not allowed to. And so that's the other point here is like on top of just sitting here and watching what these guys have done and watching the film and figuring out how they fit and what he wants to do, this competition is going to be fought out in the meeting rooms and in the, you know, who picks up on things more quickly, who, you know, again, who fits best in what they do. But I just don't know if they can have answers to that yet because they just haven't even been able to sit down and work with these guys yet.
No, so they can't have answers to these things yet. But I think that they should probably be able to get a sense of where they want to go with this in May. In May, when they get them out on the grass in OTAs, I think it will start to become kind of clear. Now, that doesn't mean it's not going to stretch into training camp because it probably will. But I think they're going to have a sense of, okay, this is the direction that we might head. And at this moment in time, I don't know what the lean is. I really don't. Like I said, sometimes I talk to people and they're like, oh no, Deshaun's got the edge here. And then other people are like, oh no, Shador has the edge. So um, I don't think Todd knows yet. I mean, how could he know right now? I mean, he has to see who is going to flourish and excel in this scheme with what he wants to do with this personnel. And you got to see it. You've got to start to see it out on the grass before you can make that determination.
Yeah. And I think too, like, I do think to your point, like they probably do, and Todd kind of indicated this, they probably would like to have an answer as early in training camp as possible. But I also think they probably want to try to have a fairly clear pecking order by the time they do get on the grass in May. And I know they get an extra mini camp this year too, a veteran mini camp that's not mandatory. I think that's usually the week of the draft. But like by the time they get on the field for OTAs and the mandatory mini camp, we've seen it both ways. We've been there when they've had a starting quarterback, whether it was Baker or Deshaun, when they've gone into it with like, here's your QB1. And it just you can tell the difference. Now it hasn't always worked, obviously, but you can just it's more organized and it's just everything is focused on that guy. And then we've seen it we've seen normal quarterback competitions where it's two guys, and then we saw last year when it was four guys, and you just realize, I think especially last year, standing there watching it, it really hit me at least. Like it's how are they getting these guys enough work if you're really trying to have a four-man quarterback competition? And I just think Todd, it I came away from the combine feeling like Todd just doesn't want to deal with that all the way into the middle of August. Like this thing is going to get hammered out a lot in the spring. And then, like you said, maybe a little bit into training camp, but I bet they have an answer pretty quickly in training camp after training camp starts.
Well, they need to, from the standpoint of just working it over and over and over with the people that are going to be actually starting football games for you. You need the reps, you need the timing in the new system, you need the scheme to all come together. It has to gel, it has to congeal. You can't be, just having a quarter of the reps or a half of the reps or a third of the reps or whatever the case may be. You've really got to be getting it down pat as soon as you possibly can. And I've seen it over the last how many ever years just be a disaster by the time you get to game one and nobody's ready. I mean, even the year that Deshaun was coming off the shoulder surgery and they were trying to learn Ken Dorsey's offense, and nobody knew it. Nobody practiced together. Everybody was injured throughout training camp. Uh, David Njoku didn't practice in training camp. Nick Chubb wasn't practicing yet. Uh, Jerry Jeudy was barely practicing. Deshaun was limited. Deshaun didn't start throwing 11 on 11s until mini camp.
Was that the year Amari held out too? When
Yeah.
he held out a spring? Yeah.
Yes. And it had the makings of disaster written all over it. You could just tell. I remember writing a lot that summer, like the first team hasn't worked together. They haven't worked together. I mean, when they practiced against the Vikings, they looked horrible, right? I mean, they looked horrible. So you just knew that wasn't going to go well. And this year, they have to have their act together much, much sooner. And I liked the thing that Todd Monken was saying about John Harbaugh was that even in the offseason, it was work, 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 work. I'll tell you what, if somebody doesn't show up for the offseason program this year, at least on the offensive side of the ball, they need to be in the doghouse. I mean, they forget it. Like, no, I mean, that can't happen. This has to be a well-oiled machine as soon as you can get it to be that. And they have to work it and rep it. And so hopefully for them, they'll go into training camp knowing who their QB1 is, and they will give that guy most of the reps.
Yeah, I think this has to be a year where guys show up. It's something again, something we talk about every year on the pod. Um, Guys can't be compelled to show up. Technically, they aren't allowed to have it held against them, but like they need guys to show up. And I would argue even on the defensive side with a new defensive coordinator, and you're trying to sort of obviously a lot of the same coaches, but you're trying to kind of install this. I don't want to say completely new culture on defense, but a different culture. It's going to be different than under Jim Schwartz. I think having guys there as much as possible in the spring is going to matter. Now I still would be surprised if we see Myles Garrett there a lot during the spring, but if they can get close to 100% attendance, I think that would matter. And I do think that does send a message sometimes. Just this idea of like like I've said on the pod before, treat the spring like you haven't accomplished anything. Treat the spring like you've won 8 games in the last 2 years. Show up, and it's not that big of an ask to show up to OTAs and minicamp. Or really, like they're not even allowed to have you there on weekends. Like it's very strict how long your days are, when you're allowed to be there. It's not that big of a hassle to show up in the spring.
No, and I applaud a guy like Denzel Ward who shows up every single year. And you ask him why, and he says, because I want to set the tone. I want to show younger guys how this is done. I want to do everything I possibly can to help our team win this year. And if everybody had that attitude, then I think they're going to be in good shape. I remember one year Zadarius showed up for, for some of the OTAs, and he was like, "Where is everybody?" Like, some of his fellow defensive linemen weren't there, and he was confused by that. He was like, "No, we need to be here. Like, what are we doing?" And so hopefully they'll get really, really good attendance this year because they're going to need it. They're going to need it. And I think the good teams do show up. And I think the teams that are playing for the playoffs and the Super Bowl are teams that understand the importance of these offseason workouts. So it's important. And they have, a longer on ramp this year. They've got extra mini camp. And I think that whatever anybody can do to show up and be a leader and be helpful, I think that's what they need to do.
Yeah, and I think even, Joel came around a little bit over the last few years. I know he initially, after everything kind of went down when they were after COVID, when they were pushing back on the offseason program, when the union was, Joel skipped a couple. But I know like in the past couple years, he maybe wasn't out on the practice field, but they were telling us at least he was in the building. So like even that extent, like if you're an older guy and you don't want to be out on the practice field, like I can understand that. But I do think showing up does it does send a message to everybody, especially when you're a veteran like a Denzel Ward, who again, to your point, has made it clear why he wants to be there. And I do think that sets a tone for a lot of guys. Let's get to another draft question here. This one comes from Demetrios from Cleveland. Hey, Mary Kay. Besides tackle and wide receiver, what position becomes a position of focus? Do the Browns pick 2 linemen, 2 receivers, or is there another position that they need to draft?
Well, I wouldn't be surprised if they look at some of these quarterbacks as developmental prospects in a mid round or in a later round. There are some pretty intriguing names that are going to be there in this draft at quarterback. And if you're looking to develop and teach and bring some guys along, then maybe you bring one of those guys in because look, it's Todd Monken who has a fresh pair of eyes on these quarterbacks. And if he sees somebody in this class that he is more excited to work with than he is with, say, a Dylan Gabriel, then why not swap those guys out, bring somebody else in that Todd would get excited about? I think a lot of people view Dylan Gabriel as someone that maybe Kevin Stefanski was more excited to work with. I don't think it was necessarily that. I think Andrew Berry was equally as excited about Dylan Gabriel. But if they feel like there's somebody in this draft that they would like to see a little bit more or might have a little bit higher upside potential, then, that could be something that they look at. So I would be on the lookout for that. Um, you can never, Andrew Berry loves to draft cornerbacks, right? I mean, you can never have too many really good cornerbacks, and you need to have some people in the pipeline, right? Once some of your stars start to get up there a little bit in years, you have to be thinking ahead, and even defensive end. So yes, if there's a pass rusher of the future in this draft, by all means, you would be looking for something like that as well. So I just think that there could be a little surprise or two along the way.
Yeah, I do wonder where they're going to go with the quarterback position. Obviously, there's the wild card of them falling in love with somebody and taking them as like their guy. But if that's not the case, how do they view like Drew Aller, or how do they view one of these guys who might be there late on day 2, even whatever early on day 3? How do they how do they view a guy like Taylon Green? Like I don't know. There could be some. There could be some interesting decisions that they make here at the quarterback position and kind of building out that room.
Yeah, I mean, a guy like Taylon Green, who had just off the charts measurables at the combine and is 6'6". A guy like that, I mean, you might want to get him into your building and see what he can become and see what you can do with him. Now, he might be a 2-3 year project, but so what? I mean, Malik Willis has been a 4-year project right now so far. But if it turns out the way Miami hopes it does, he's going to be one heck of a quarterback. And he showed some really good things last year. So if you can develop a guy, and he wasn't showing that early on when he was with the Titans, and he'll be the first to admit he wasn't working it hard enough. He didn't know how to work. He didn't know what to work. I mean, sometimes it takes time. It takes maturity. It takes coaching. It takes mentorship. It takes a lot. It takes a village. But, if you see tantalizing traits like incredible speed and good arm strength and some things like that, you've got a coaching staff this year that would love to get their hands on a guy like that and see what they could do with somebody like that. So I wouldn't rule anything out. I'm very intrigued by Taylor Green. I need to watch some film, and I need to talk to some people, and I need to study. I need to go through my process. And I'll let you know what I think after I get through all these steps that I like to go through. But heading in, I'm tantalized by some of the traits.
Well, and I think this is going to be music to your ears. But like we talked about this with Jalen Milroe last year. Now, obviously, that was a different situation where you would have had to have taken him earlier in the draft. But like drafting a guy like that who can do something very specific at the quarterback position, can't you find a role for that guy? Like, couldn't you? And look, Seattle ended up not using Jalen Milroe much at all. But like, if you draft a guy like that onto a roster like this that has a lot of quarterback unrest. I'm not saying you have to draft him to be your starter. He doesn't have to play 20, you don't have to turn this into like the college thing where you split, you split time. But like, if you have a guy like that just on your roster, like, couldn't you find a way to utilize that skill set and just mix things up and like change things up? I know you've been a two quarterback system person for a while. Like, hey, if you've got a guy, why not find a package for him, right? Like, I don't know. I think that's an interesting way to use a day 3 pick and bring him in and say, Todd, look, here's this. We don't know what he's going to develop into long term, but at least right now, here's another toy to play with. Figure out a way to utilize him and cause some problems on, I don't know, 5 plays a game.
Well, nobody knew what to make of Lamar Jackson when he was coming out. I mean, my goodness. He was the last last player picked in the first round of that 2018 draft, and nobody really knew what to make of him. And so I think he's a prime example of take a look at a guy who has a unique skill set and who is kind of a unicorn and see if it can turn into something. And I do think when you have an athlete like that, with that kind of size, with that kind of speed, I do think that somebody should be smart enough to just get him into the building and see what you can do. I mean, the draft is such a crapshoot anyways. I mean, what is it? Half the picks don't make it anyway. So if you're going to blow it on something, why not have it be, and I always say this, why not have it be a quarterback who you think might have something for you down the road? That's why I was all about drafting Malik Willis in 2022, because he had the tantalizing skill set. He had the arm strength. He had the running ability. And I figured that if somebody coached him up correctly, that he could turn into something. And it took a while. I looked really wrong about that in his first 2 years. I thought, oh, okay, I've lost my touch. But but now, he just might be what some people thought he could be. And the Steelers really should have drafted him instead of Kenny Pickett that year.
Yeah, that's we have enough draft misses to break down here. We don't need to get into Steelers
Right.
draft misses. Um,
Exactly.
as far as other positions are concerned, I do. You mentioned cornerback as one. I think you could afford to add a safety somewhere. I'm not saying number 6, but like, could you add another young safety? You've got Grant Delpit, you've got Ronnie Hickman. Could you add another guy into that room? I don't know what they're going to do with the veterans there, so it might not be a bad idea to add somebody there. And then, look, they'll probably take another interior lineman too. So I think there's once you get tackle figured out, once you get receiver figured out, I think everything's on the board as far as what they could do. is concerned. Okay, Mary Kay, this is a wild card. This comes from Jeff L in Bath, Ohio. Sometimes I like these questions. Hey, Mary Kay, there are three major league sports franchises in Cleveland. Two are competently managed, while the third is a perpetual clown show. I think people can figure out the order there. The third is far and away the most popular. Why? Do Cleveland fans just love most what they can't have? And as we know, and I'm certainly not going to complain about it because it's my job to cover them. This is and always will be a Brownstown through and through. People will love the Cavs, they'll love the Guardians, but we know that no matter what, this is just going to be a Brownstown through and through.
It really is. I mean, it just really is. And can you just imagine what the championship, what the Super Bowl parade would be like here, right? I mean, I was downtown for the Cavs parade, and I think the Browns parade would top that. I do. Do you think so?
Yeah, I think it would. I think it would just be insane. Obviously, it would probably be colder and whatever. But yeah, I think it would be. I don't know how many more people you can fit downtown, but it would certainly test those limits.
That's true. That is true. But it does seem to me like that one would be the crown jewel of the city if that happens. But yeah, I mean, we'll have to see. I know the Haslams want to get it right. I know they're trying to get it right. I know that's what they're going to tell us once again at the owners' meetings. I know they hate the fact that they have to keep taking a step forward and a couple steps back, and they don't want to be in this position. I know they want to get to winning as soon as they possibly can this year. The weird part about this year, of course, once again, is that it's not a good quarterback year. It's not a great year to need one, and they're just going to have to hope that they have their guy on the roster that can win games for them. Um, but yeah, the Haslams they have struggled to get it right, and hopefully for them, they'll figure out the quarterback thing as soon as possible.
They could actually just do the parade from from 76 Lou Groza down to the new stadium in Brook Park. There's probably plenty of room to fit people there if they wanted to do that.
They
Um,
could do that.
I just think first and foremost, Ohio is a football state. It's a football like it just is what it is, and
Mhm.
it's just always going to be like that. And plus, the NFL right now is just keeps getting bigger and bigger. So I think that plays into it as well. It's just the most popular of all the major sports. So that's part of it too. But I will say this to your point about the Haslams, and this is not to like defend. This is not to just be a shill, but I will give them credit. They've gotten it wrong, but they do continually try, and
Mhm.
they do keep spending money. They do keep writing checks. So at the very least, we know they're going to keep trying, and eventually, you hope they hit on something. But this isn't like a Cincinnati situation where they just don't ever spend money. Or speaking of other sports teams in town, this isn't a Guardian situation where it's like if you could just spend a little more money here, maybe that could get them over the hump. So at the very least, when the Haslams say they want to get it right, and they are trying, I think that's true. They're not just saying that and then closing the checkbook. They are genuinely trying.
They really are, and that's why they were able to go out and probably overpay on some of these offensive linemen that they just acquired, because the Haslams have the deep pockets to want to get this right, and we can only just imagine what people would be saying if they weren't willing to pay to rebuild the offensive line, or if they weren't willing to pay for a quarterback or whatever else. But they've always been willing to go out and shell out the big bucks for whatever it takes to get this team restocked and on the track to winning. So we'll have to see. But hey, I need to back up on something for a minute here, Dan.
Oh, all right, go ahead.
When we were talking about what other positions in the draft, you mentioned you said maybe even a safety, and she said, and then you said not at number 6. So I just wanted to ask you, so you wouldn't take Caleb Downs at number 6?
D- yeah, I mean, gosh, this is a debate we're gonna have forever. I don't think I would. I think I would.
Okay.
I think I would either take someone else or I would trade the pick.
Okay.
I like Caleb Downs. And I mean, some people think he is one of those guys, so I could certainly understand why you would do it. but I don't think safety is a premium enough position. And I don't know that, like, if you can guarantee me he's going to be Ed Reed, then I'm doing it. But I think, if it's fixing tackle, if it's taking another premium position, I think I would probably go that direction. But yeah, I mean, that's the debate. Like, he is that good that's a legitimate question.
Yeah, if he is generational, or if he's going to be one of the best at his position for the next 13 years, then I would be all for it. But you have to make sure that you're a game changer and that you are going to be a big reason that the Browns can get to the next level and try to win a Super Bowl.
Let me throw this at you. Let's say he was going to be like that guy. We don't even need to say Ed Reed. Let's say he's going to be like Kyle Hamilton, who I think is really good. And I think probably should have been in the DPOY discussion this year. That type of player.
Mm-hmm.
But somebody called you up and offered you a first round pick next year. Would you give that away for a first round pick next year? If it didn't require you, well, let's just say it's not a super big move down. Let's say like 10 or 11 at most.
I would take the pick next year.
Take the pick next year because you might need a quarterback.
Yep.
And that's more important than anything.
I would take the pick. If you don't have a quarterback, you don't have anything. And if you think that you have a chance to get a much better, ready Dante Moore or Lenora Sellers or Arch Manning or whatever you think you can get, I would want to be in position to be able to do that. So I would do that. Would you do that?
I would. Yeah. I think that would be an ideal situation and I don't know if they could get a first round pick for number 6, but the ideal situation for the Browns would be a defensive player that people really want. Mm-hmm. Maybe a team gives them a first round pick next year to move up and get that guy. I would definitely try to get another first next year.
Mm-hmm. Me too.
All right. Well, we're just getting started on draft talk. We're still, it's only March 16th, so we're like more than a month away from the draft still. So we'll get into this plenty more. We're going to be starting Tim and Lance pods here soon we're going to do dueling big boards at some point next week. They're going to lay out their top 10 and we're going to see how they compare. So we're going to really start digging into the draft here on the Orange and Brown Talk podcast. So just get subscribed on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. On YouTube, it's Cleveland Browns on cleveland.com. And of course, if you're not a Football Insider subscriber, head to cleveland.com/Browns. Click the blue banner at the top of the page to get involved with that. And of course, all our socials. Any social you're on, go look for Orange and Brown Talk and give us a follow. Mary Kay, I'll talk to you later.
Sounds great.